Hey, what's up, Canada and beyond? Welcome. It's been a minute, hasn't it? We've got something a little bit unique happening here tonight. I think it's going to be pretty special. I think you guys are going to love it. Kind of thinking just before the show what we're going to, what would be the best, fastest, shortest way to describe it, and it'll be all about bankers, bandits, and bullion. Uh, if the world's going to have a revolution, those are some of the things that we are definitely going to need to be talking about. So, what do you do when all of conspiracies seem to be coming true? You talk to our friend Bryce Wade over at New World Precious Metals, and we'll be bringing him on here in just one hot minute. So, and before we get to that, gang, welcome. You know what to do if you've been here before. Give this a share. Make sure that you're plugged in. You're probably not getting notifications about our live streams. We are definitely not in the sharing column for the social media platforms and the establishment. So make sure you get plugged in. We've got a new Substack. It's another great way to get plugged in outside of the current systems. Lots going on. You know where to find us elsewhere. If you're new here, stay tuned. Hold on to your hats. Maybe grab a stiff one. But we're going to talk about one of our partners that makes some of this possible. One of the questions I got asked the most is, what do we do about the current financial crisis we're having in Canada? And like I said earlier, when it comes to those kinds of things, this is where we bring in somebody that knows an awful lot about all of the crazy shenanigans going on around the world, because that is exactly his business and what he needs to help protect everybody from. Bryce, welcome back. It's been a little while. Can't wait to hear what you've got for us here tonight. Yeah, you are the guy that knows all about the crazy, because that's what affects the bullion. So, bankers, bandits, and bullion. What do you think of that?
Yeah, it's awesome, man, and thank you for having me back, man. It's a pleasure, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Oh, it's great. I mean, I struggle when it comes to this kind of stuff. I mean, I can read the geopolitical situation, the roadmap as well or better than most, and I pay attention. But when it comes to um, the impact on the financial situation and the intricacies of all of that, that's the intersection where you come into the picture, and that's where you kind of, you live in that environment and that ecosystem. All I am is a big mouth that refuses to shut up and give people that know more than me a chance to tell people what they know more than me about. So this is something that we talked about doing for a while now, and if you folks out there get some value out of this at the end of the day, when we start to connect some of these dots and give you guys some ideas on how to move forward on some of this stuff. For there's going to be some homework, guys. I'm going to be sharing some links, and Bryce is going to be sharing some stuff. So we're going to get into some real meat and potato stuff here with y'all tonight, and so we want to carry this on and get people more and more informed and more prepared for what's going on or what's coming. So tell us, Bryce, where do we start today? I guess for a basic introduction for people that are brand new here, you work with New World Precious Metals. That's how we come to know each other initially, a little time back now, and the reason for this. Relationship, friendship, moving forward was because you guys specialize in helping people protect themselves, not just, from sound financial structure, but because you see shenanigans afoot.
Yeah, absolutely, and maybe that's where we'll start is kind of the backdrop of why we're here in the first place. So maybe I'll just step back and talk about gold and silver specifically and how I got here. So I've always had a significant and deep distrust of the financial system and the people that are running it, for a very simple purpose: is that you can just look around throughout our lifetime and see that something's not right. And I kind of realized this from a really young age. When I was, I don't know, about 6 or 7 or something like that, I was going over, and I live in Vancouver. You can see behind me here. But when I was a kid and I went over the Burrard Street Bridge, which has this beautiful view of downtown Vancouver, it was the middle of summer. I always remember this because of what my mom did for me at this time. We were going over the bridge, and I'm like, Mom, this is amazing. Like, humanity is so advanced, and we've done so well, and there's so many amazing things. She's like, oh yeah, you think we're amazing, eh? Well, let me show you. And so we went over the Burrard Street Bridge, took a right, and then headed back over to Maine. Went all the way up Maine, and went to Maine and Hastings, commonly known here as Paine and Wastings, where it was, chaos and junkies and crime and destruction. And I honestly, I started crying. I'm like, why is everything so screwed up? How do these people not have, like, I live in Canada, bro, in Vancouver, one of the nicest places on the planet, multiple years running. Why is all these things a problem? And how is it literally streets from one of the most expensive places in the city? It just broke my mind at a very young age. And I was like, there must be something wrong. We must be able to do better. And there must be a purpose and a reason that this is the system that we have and it's set up in this way. And so pretty much from a really young age, I've always had a fairly, I don't want to say deep understanding, but definitely a deep-seated belief that there was something wrong with what we were doing and how we were being organized. And that belief has carried me through up until today, where throughout that time, I've always looked at what is the opportunity to fix it? What is the opportunity to upgrade it and do something better and create something better, right? Because a lot of the things that we see in society right now are directed from the top down to benefit the top, right? And if we, as the people, are going to be working together, as it were, or living together peacefully, we must have a system that benefits all of us in some degree. Now, that might seem communistic in a sense. Absolutely not. I'm very much
That's more social structure, social contract is what you're talking
yeah,
to. What things we commonly agree upon to make society work safely, functionally, and for everybody's benefit.
yeah, exactly. And I think it's an important thing to mention that there's two ways to control people, right? There's by consent or by force, right? All empires throughout history have leaned on by force because a lot of people didn't want to do what they want to do. Why do I have to go to the other side of the planet and fight a war for your dumbass when I get killed and you get rich? That doesn't seem like a good deal to me or my family. You know what I mean? And so there's been centuries, if not millennia, of people trying to force other people to do their bidding for their own personal benefit, right? And if we're gonna get out of this rat race and this system that's been built for us that's not beneficial to us, we have to create something different and create something better. And one of the reasons, getting back to my point, the reason I got into gold and silver is because I looked throughout history, right? And you can look through all of human history, basically back to the dawn of civilization, more or less. And there always has to be an intermediary between services and products. Otherwise, civilization doesn't function. An economy is measured in transactions, right? So I need this, you need that. How do we collaborate and move resources around our economy to accomplish the things that we're trying to do, whatever those things are? Live, eat, whatever, it doesn't matter, right? They're all transactions, right? And so you have to have some sort of intermediary. And gold and silver has been that for literally forever because it's a rare, difficult to copy and reproduce resource that everybody can agree that has value, and I'll trade you for it for something else. Okay, because mining was difficult, very difficult back in the day. And kind of my last point on this, and then I'll let you take over a little bit, is that when you think about all the gold in history, okay, almost all of it, probably like 90% of it that we've ever mined as a species still exists in somebody's pocket and under somebody's control, right? And so you have throughout history hundreds, if not thousands, of nation states, monarchies, empires, whatever, that have collapsed over time, their currency, whatever they had. But that metal, that gold, that ownership, that value has always been under somebody's control, right? And what you see happening right now, gold literally hit its all-time high yesterday. And it's good, and I'm telling you now, it's going to be going a lot higher than that for a variety of reasons. We can get into that later if you want. But what that shows is that somebody's wealth, or somebody has always controlled that wealth. And when you have wealth, you can create and do and organize and pay for other people to do things for you, right? And so what gold and silver really allows you to do is have an intermediary between resources or services that nobody can take from you because it's physical.
Well, the gold and silver is uh, the universal language of exchange.
Yeah.
Right. And what we've been living through for most of us of our lifetimes here now is the experiment. We are living the failure of an anomaly with this fiat currency, uh, debt based economies that these guys have been this criminal syndicate has been waging against unsuspecting and innocent, and naive, and all of those things societies for a while, and I think we're seeing that playing out here uh, for those that are watching, and and this alludes to the BRICS geo economy starting to emerge, which is ultimately at its root a commodities gold and silver backed currency exchange agreement system. The same thing as what we've been doing, but it's based on reality, not on imaginary data and numbers and printed digits to make our economy go around.
Well, let me push it back on that a little bit, as that's the idea behind it, but that's not the function of it yet. I mean, that's only
Right.
like, hey, we're going to base everything on it, but they still all have central banks, and they're still all controlled by the same people. So not
Oh,
quite what they
100%.
want yet.
But what I'm getting at here is this is where this shift is happening, this change, this
Hmm.
evolution with the collapse of the empire of that we know it and our currency experiment. Something else is going to come out of it, whether it's bricks or we fix what we've got. We get rid of the central banks. I mean, we can talk. This is what you're here for, is you've been watching these guys your entire life specifically and how they operate, but it seems to me that these guys are collaborating, and that doesn't mean one is better than the other. At the end of the day, I think they're all steering us on both sides of the coin to what they want, which is ultimate control through CBDCs, whether it's
Yep.
China, Russia, America, Canada. They all want the same thing.
Yeah, and to that point, and sorry, let me go back for one point. You mentioned this is an experiment. I push back a little bit on that too. Is that this is actually a blueprint of sorts, because I think it's happened multiple times over history. They essentially did this to the British before they really fell. This happened to the Dutch, and it's happened multiple times. Other probably happened to Rome too, when they started printing money. Their printed their currency into extinction, essentially. So I think the people that have controlled the central banks have been around doing this, being hard money lenders and money movers and such, have been doing it for a long time.
Well, yeah, and forgive me for broad brushing it to that extent. I guess we've all can all still remember the pictures after World War II,
Yeah.
when World War One of them, kids running around with wheelbarrows full of money, and that's we're really not that far removed from that wash rinse repeat cycle.
Totally, and maybe that's something good to mention. Actually, is that the creation of a new currency is a really unique kind of thing in history. It doesn't happen that often, especially when you have nation states like we have now. So, like Sri Lanka, last year, the year before, whatever it was, collapsed. Right? Do they have a new currency? They were essentially taken over by the IMF, which is probably the blueprint for a lot of countries that get too far into debt and collapse. But we'll put that aside for a second. And when you have the creation of a new currency, right? What do you do with it? What is backing that? If I come to you and be like, hey, you want to use my dollars? Oh, how do I use them? Oh, well, you can use them at my store. Your one store where you sell one thing, that's not a very good deal for you, because if I can, if my money that I give you is only good to spend it at my store, I just get it back. There's no value to you, right? So when we have these international currencies and the international forex markets, which is one of the kind of the I want to say upgrades, but the technological upgrades that we've really had for the global economy, that really facilitated the global logistic structures that we now live in, which is globalization, right? That's what they set up to do, is that they could move money anywhere at any time to buy anything from anyone and move it to anywhere and sell it to anyone, right? So now that system is kind of breaking down, probably intentionally to a degree, but it is. And when you have a new currency created, the obvious question is, what's it backed by? Your military, or I say so, isn't very good. Because ultimately, what does that do for me, right? And backing something by gold is what has been, common throughout history, right? And I'm not sure how many people know this, but Canada used to have 1,000 tons of gold. It's generally considered that the U.S. has about 8,000 tons of gold in there under control. I mean, nobody actually knows if that's real. Who knows if they sold it off or they got more? Nobody really knows because it's never been audited, right? But that should give you kind of a baseline comparison of what we had in the past. Now, because of our infinite stupidity of our leader Justin Trudeau, he sold it all. We have zero gold backing our currency. And what did they do with that gold? Probably sold it to China, honestly, but they've been selling it off for about 40 years. But they completed that sale in 2015, I think, 2015 or 2016.
Well, it's funny that you can. It's slightly different. In America, they have a working number, quote unquote, that's never been audited of X number of tons of gold. But in Canada, we just know it's public knowledge that our Lord Farquaad got rid of it all. And there was actually, and I wish I remember who did that. Did a recent actually did a an investigation on it, and through tracking brinks and hard metal bullion carriers was able to track for a certain number of time that 90% of the world's gold was all going to the same place in that red and yellow star bangled banner across the western pond
Yeah.
by the ton. And
Oh,
yeah,
huge.
so
And I can actually expand on that. So one of the things that China is trying to do right now to potentially save their economy, because it's absolutely dropping like a stone in deep water off a cliff that somebody just threw down at full speed. They are buying gold like it's going out of style. I don't know with what money, because they're essentially broke in a bunch of ways. But we'll put that aside for a second. But essentially, what they're doing is they have the SCO, I think it's called. I can't remember the name of it offhand, but there's basically another gold exchange. So gold, the price of gold is set in London by the London. I can't remember the name of it. I should know this. I've looked at it so many times. I can't think of it off the top of my head right now. But anyways, the price of gold is set every day by Britain and the COMEX, and there's basically two places in the West that it's done. And China is trying to compete with that. So they set up, I think it's called the SEO. I'll probably get flamed into oblivion in the comments, but whatever. But anyways, they're setting up this exchange, and what they're essentially doing is they're setting their price of gold higher. So what people in the West are doing is they're arbitraging. So you buy it at this price and you sell it at this price and you make the in between, right? But all of that gold is going from the West into China's coffers, and it's never going to leave. So when their economy, their currency eventually completely collapses, and when the U.S. dollar eventually completely collapses, whoever has the most gold is going to be able to, like, oh, look, I've got all this gold, and I can replace this currency with something. And this is this is an important thing for everybody to realize too, is this is what the central banks are doing. The central banks, Eastern authoritarians, super high net worth individuals, they're all buying as much gold and silver as they can get their hands on. And gold hit record highs yesterday for this reason. Silver is still severely undervalued for what it is, and it is slowly rising as well. And I can talk more about that too. But the point I'm trying to make is that the people that know what's coming are doing this because they are preparing for it, and they're preparing for it with basically everything that they can get their hands on. So sooner or later, what is available to be purchased openly is going to run out. Now, we're kind of lucky because I work in this industry now, and we've got really good connections. So we have a lot available, right? But eventually people are going to wake up and realize, yo, I got to get real hard assets, which is basically anything that's physical or precious metals in some way, shape, or form, because those are real. Because digits on a screen don't mean anything. I used to really like Bitcoin. I don't so much anymore because I think it's a distraction to pull your money away from something that's actually physically valuable. So there's a case to be made for Bitcoin, but I'm not going to make it. I'm also not going to harsh on it too much, but I do think it's less valuable than physical assets or precious metals for a variety of reasons. And when that happens, the price of gold and the price of silver is going to skyrocket at some point, because the actual pent up demand is going to push it so high. Because one of the reasons it hasn't gone up already is because it's being suppressed by BlackRock and all the other idiots that are at the top trying to buy up whatever they can get their hands on.
These are some of the things and that was when you and I first started talking with the guys. These were things that me and my inner circle, we knew were coming. The suppression of the precious metals and all of these things, and that insanity is unsustainable, and we are headed down a path of insanity. And so this became a priority to start bringing up these discussions and bringing you guys in, because you actually manifest real world solutions to this, with the foundation of understanding that our runway is getting shorter and shorter and shorter by the day, and it's going to get harder and more expensive to protect yourself from what's going on out there. And personally, I see a place for Bitcoin in the world, but for me right now, in this crisis situation that's coming, I'm not investing my safety, my future, on a gamble of what might happen when they unplug the power systems, or the government says digital access. No, you don't get digital access. You can't touch these things. The government wants them. Whatever they decide to arbitrarily do under some of their penalties and rules and laws that they're manifesting as we speak, that to me isn't a viable solution. I might be a little bit old school, but I have more faith in a hole in the backyard or under my mattress than I do in what can be digitally controlled or taken away from me at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's ultimately, and maybe this is a good time to bring up this slide, because ultimately I think, to your point, that there's a couple main things that we're going to be really facing, and these are the four pillars. And I talk about this as much as I can, because these are the four pillars of enslavement. Pardon me. These are the four pillars of enslavement, right? So digital IDs, central bank digital currencies, microchips in your hands, and you live in a 15-minute city. If you have these four things rolled out, this is what their ultimate end goal is. For everybody that doesn't die in famine or war or whatever other nonsense they have coming down the pipeline, this is what they want everybody after the new system is built to have to do to access anything. Because what this allows them to do, in very simple terms, is push a button and you're done. You're gone, you're out, you can't do anything, you can't access anything. And a really simple example, right? Think of a Tesla, okay? Tesla doesn't even have a physical door handle. You basically have to wave your hand or push a button or whatever their magic is, right? And there's a really old quote that sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, right? And if you have this microchip in your hand that's connected to your digital ID that only spends central bank digital currencies and is only good in your 15-minute cities, if you do anything, say anything that's against the narrative that you disagree with, that they disagree with, right, that you're not allowed to do, boom, button pushed, and they can't, and you can't do anything, right? You're done. You're removed from society, because that's what they ultimately want. Oh, that person's a problem. Boop, you're gone. That's it. They don't have to do anything. You'll just starve and die, essentially.
That's exactly what they did during the convoy.
Yeah, I know.
So, that power is only being magnified.
Yes. So and so this is why I bring this up. So these four things are what you absolutely have to fight against and stop. And the obvious next question is, how do we do that? So maybe I'll just go into another slide here. I did this presentation a couple weeks ago in Alberta, and one of the important things that I like to push is that there's always a process, right? Regardless of all of the problems that we face, these are man-made problems. It's not like these are impossible things to fix. Somebody is making these decisions. Somebody is carrying out these decisions, and somebody is enforcing these decisions. So that's three levels of possibility that you can fight against, right? Who is responsible? What are they doing? How are they doing it? What are we going to do to stop it, right? Those are the questions. And so I like to show this. This is the process. So in any problem, right? And I was a business consultant before this, and this is what I did with my clients, right? So when you have a problem, what is the result that you've gotten that you want to fix? Or one of the two, this is the other option. What is the result that you want to get to? And how do you get there is the ultimate question, right? And so that process of questions, answers, actions, results is how you do that, right? Because you have to start with a goal or a result that you already have. Because with a result that you already have, and let's say crime is up 300% in Canada right now. Okay, well, how did we get here? Is an obvious question. What changed that this happened? So where did these things happen? Where was the decision handed down? What was the law that changed? Whatever the process is, those are the questions, right? We ask a list of questions, we get those answers and say, okay, all of these things happened. If we have good data, we can assume that they're true. Now we have to say, what are the actions that we need to take or can take to get the desired result and stop the result that we already have, right? That process is a really collaborative endeavor. You're never going to be able to solve these big problems by yourself, and that's why it's so important for the freedom community and people that do care about this stuff and don't want to live in the utter enslavement and garbage that they have planned for us. That what are we going to do about it? If the government is part of the problem and the corporations are complicit or responsible or both, that leaves one group of people to do something about it, and that's you and me.
in this in this there's it's so visible on so many levels, where we're seeing this charade, this uh Hollywood of Ottawa, manifesting exactly this scenario, that all four of those problems are, they are the solutions that they're providing, i.e., their 15-minute cities through their new recent splurge of for 15-minute people coops. I mean chicken coops. I mean apartments. I mean housing solutions, that they wants to implement across this country. Uh, the environmental terrorism, manifesting it. They're just going to stop building roads for us, right?
Gilbo is the most ridiculous politician. I mean, it really blows my mind. And sorry for interrupting, but it really blows my mind how you can have so many people competing for the worst politician in Canadian history at the same time, and they're all in the same cabinet. It's unbelievable.
So many of the worst people, so many foreign-born, non-invested people, so many blatant criminals, so many hundreds of ethics violations, and they're still driving the suicide bus.
Yeah, and they're trying to get kids on that bus. I can't believe that was something that they actually suggested, bro. Unbelievable.
It's we are definitely not, you know, and I've got a Substack half written on this. It's not even incompetence.
No, it's not.
These
It's intentional.
this is 100% intentional. These guys are not idiots. They are criminal members of a syndicate that has a monopoly on government and legislation and lawmaking. Primarily lawmaking and enforcement is where they have intervened, and managed to capture and replace these establishment systems with hyper activists and criminal terrorists, for lack of a better, less accurate description. It's the only way I can describe them without getting even more censored than I already am. But this is a manufactured destabilization. That's what I've been calling it. I told people to start expecting this the night of the Brexit countdown. That was when I went public and said, "Oh, baby ducks, it's coming now. Watch the insanity manifest itself and quantify."
Yeah. Absolutely, and so I'm sharing another picture here. This is what it really comes down to. It's a choice, right? So all of the things that I've kind of mentioned already, these are all things that we're being pushed down a path, right? They want us to go down a certain way and do certain things, so we take ourselves down this path to where they want us to eventually end up. It's basically like leading livestock to slaughter. Hey, you can go down the right or you can go down the left, and they both lead to the same place, right? That's what they want us to do, right? And ultimately, this is the choice that we have. Do you want to accept that or not, right? And if it's no, we have to create something different. We have to build something different, and nobody else is going to do this for us, right? So it really comes down to what you do with your community, right? And there's maybe just give me a sec here. I'll pull out another slide, because what it comes down to is what you do with your community. Where is it?
It's lemming socialism if we continue down this direction.
Yeah,
Literally, and I see a comment here. The swamp is worldwide, 100%.
it is.
But it's at a point here where, and this is why we're having conversations and discussions like this, because unfortunately people don't get the magnitude of it, and where the intervention points actually are. And this is, and I'm going to excuse me for taking a pause on interrupting here on this, Bryce, but uh, there's a little story that's been haunting me for the last 2 weeks. I watch a lot of old photography videos. I love seeing restored photographs. That was always my passion, photography. That was, I won awards when I was young, all of the area. So that's a passion for me. But I watched one that they recovered from that was a young lady clutching her valuables to her chest, with a look of panic on her face, and she was up to her elbows in the water on the Titanic, clutching her valuables instead of trying to save her life. And that is imprinted on my brain right now, as to seeing some. This is exactly where we are at with so many Canadians. They're clutching what they know is secure, and they think, and they've been programmed, is their value, is their life, and they're holding it onto their hands, and the Titanic is sinking. So yeah, this, it might be a brutal analogy, but this is exactly where I see us right now, for the vast majority. When I look around and we still don't understand, and I was in a group meeting today, a massive meeting, and I've talked about their, wondering where does this come from, and I'm saying it's all laid out in the UNSDA. It's
Yeah.
all laid out in these compacts that they've signed with these unelected foreign entities. It's all there. They boast about it, but we still sit around clutching our, our perceived value, to our chest, while we really don't understand the baseline of what we're up against. Where
Absolutely, and a
we're at.
couple people in the chat here made some really good points. So I just want to touch on them. There's a whole bunch of people. So Marianne mentioned that there was a whole bunch of people that are buying physical metals as opposed to gold and silver stocks, or the commodity, or the ETF. Right, that was a really good one. And here's the hard reality that I don't think a lot of people know: for every ounce of gold and silver that's out in actual physical existence, there is 400 ounces of each that are paper, which means the actual value that people have invested in those precious metals theoretically is 400 times the actual price of those metals, right? Because that's as much money has been put into those things at whatever the price was. So it's like roughly that amount of money, right? And that stuff eventually is going to be like, what's that? Musical chairs, right? Eventually somebody's going to lose, and most of those people are going to lose, right? So if you're going to invest your money in precious metals, do not, and I repeat, do not waste your money on ETFs, because they're going to be worthless eventually. If you want to take delivery of that ETF, because that's what originally they were supposed to be, is that you could take delivery, but you don't have to. They'll eventually be worthless, right? And the people that are doing this, like I mentioned, all of these different groups, right? They're taking physical delivery as much as they possibly can, right? And one of the things that we have as a strategic advantage as a brokerage is we have an international wholesale program. So essentially, what that means is it's a bank vault, not a bank vault. It's a private vaulting system that's not connected to the banking system. So it's basically outside of where the government and the banks can seize it. So, and this is something that's important to mention too. I'm sure many of your listeners are very well aware of this, but for those that aren't, there's what's called bail-ins and bail-outs. So a bail-out is what we got in 2007 when all of the banks collapsed. Okay, now that, if I just make a simple example here, this is the bank. Okay, it collapses for whatever reason. It got insolvent. Think SVB last year, where there's, oh, we don't have any money, bonds, and blah blah blah, all the nonsense, right? And what happens with a bailout is that the government or investors or somebody bails out the bank by putting money inside the bank. Okay, that's what a bailout is. It's actually happening right now. And on Monday, actually, the vehicle that they set up to rescue the banks last year ends on Monday. So I'm actually really interested to see how that affects the economy and what happens. So I'm very interested to see what happens next week, because that could be really significant. But putting that aside for a second, a bail-in is actually happening in China right now. So essentially, they take the deposits of all of the depositors in the bank, so all of the money that's in the bank, and they switch it from the currency of the depositor, and they essentially give either bank stock or debt to that person, and then they take the asset, and that includes safety deposit boxes and anything connected in the control of the bank, and they liquidate it to stabilize the bank, because they suck at managing money.
So let me dumb this down for my brain and see if I get this. They just took my bank account of my money, and they've given me a paper slip, and they're going to go and give my money away to somebody else to pay their bills, and I can now buy whatever that paper slip entitles me to, what they authorize, at the same mining store that they're giving me the paper slip from.
Pretty close. The only difference is that that paper slip is bank stock that would essentially be worthless at that point, or debt against something
Oh,
that
so
they.
it only works at the store that this particular bank has agreed to accept your monopoly paper at for their goods and services.
Potentially, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and so like
Um,
I was mentioning, that's happening in China right now because everybody, all of the government entities in China are essentially broke because
So
their economy has basically fallen off a cliff. They don't have exports, they don't have real estate because their real estate's dropped 50%. And forewarning to everybody, that's happening in the West right now too because bankruptcies and mortgage refinancing is skyrocketing right now for a variety. We can talk about that too if you want. But basically, the threat to physical assets of real estate, that's happening now too because of commercial real estate and all of the people that are underwater because they can't afford the interest rate hikes that have
I,
basically 10x from 5 years ago.
I think I read yesterday that insolvencies were up like 300%
And it's just starting.
and it's just starting. Yeah. Yeah. Uh, so now this to tie it back into the bail-ins, our government established themselves that capability here in Canada
Twice.
to do that twice. So we've seen them take uh, funding at their arbitrary discretion through the trucker convoy. They've authorized themselves to take our bank accounts to cover their debts, and they're signing deals in places in like to send billions and billions more to Ukraine and Africa. How far are we away from them potentially deciding that your and my bank accounts would be better handled by them, Bryce?
Sorry, restate the question.
How far are we away from these bail-ins happening in Canada?
So I'm a little bit more pessimistic than most because I understand kind of where the trajectory is. The bail-ins specifically, we're probably not going to see them this year, I would imagine. But there's a caveat to that. That really depends what happens with World War III. And reason being is that Russia and U.S. are already a state of war. It's just not official and it's just not really public. But that is what's happening in all but name. Okay, because
100%.
Russia is actually at war with Ukraine, and Ukraine is a proxy of NATO right now. So there's assets, there's money all flowing into Ukraine. We just sent a whole bunch too, which is monumentally stupid, but we'll leave that aside for a second. And so what that means basically is if things like just think of what would happen right now if a nuke detonated today. Like, what would that do to the markets? Would they be like, "Oh, that's fine. I'm sure that'll be fine," or would they go, nuts and like, oh, it's war? Like, people just don't understand, I think, what the real risks of nuclear war. And we're in Canada, right? So everybody watching this should really hit home to everybody. We are in between the three biggest nuclear armed countries on the planet that all have nukes aimed at them, each other, right? Like, Russia has nukes aimed at
Yeah,
China. We're in
we're
the middle.
smack dab in the middle,
Like,
100%.
even if they miss by like 100 kilometers or something, we get hit. Like, there's a
Well,
massive military base like a couple hundred kilometers from me down in Seattle, so guaranteed I get hit too.
and that's aside from the fact that through infiltration, two of the sides look at us as potential threats to themselves already as neighbors.
Yep.
I mean, it's not an. I hate to admit this, but I've seen the conversations in some of our neighboring countries saying Canada's becoming a threat here. Maybe we should just end their stupidity for them and get a control of this situation. Um, I'm like, I can't believe that these conversations are legitimately happening by people that consider themselves serious. But this is the monumental level of stupidity where we are, as you said, smack dab in the middle of people don't seem to realize that this pissing chihuahua in Ottawa called Trudeau seems to forget that the baddest man apparently on the planet is our freaking neighbor to the north.
Yeah.
Uh, and he is far more capable and at this point far more willing to smack or kick that pissing chihuahua than and yeah, sorry, excuse me. Can I leave it there
Grant
for
harder, bro. Tell me how you really feel.
well, and I mean, this all of this nicety and self-censoring, we're not helping anybody by doing all of this. And if we don't start
No.
to get our priorities straight and stop listening to the cuck majority in this country that is, willingly watching these people come in and rape our country and destroy our people and literally kill and murder them, and that none of them are here to help. All they are here to do is pillage. If we don't start to get a grip of our own shiznit here, there's really, I mean, what's the point?
Yeah, and I think it's important to be said too that CSIS recently came out. Some I can't remember the guy's name, but he recently came. I think it was this week or last week. Basically, came out and said that all Canadian governments have been infiltrated to some degree by the CCP. The CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, I call Trudeau and his minions and his morons the Canadian Communist Party as well. But yep,
That's an interesting setup, and I'm glad you brought that up because their public statement brought it up from Brian Mulroney forward, where the threat of CCP infiltration, conveniently omitting the fact that Justin's father, just prior to that, was a card-carrying member and banned from the United States for being a card-carrying communist member of the CCP, and initially paved the road for the CCP for their initial infiltration and subsequently set up the government for all of the governments to develop public-private partnership relationships with these foreign entities that have not. So it's not just Master Klaus that has infiltrated Canada through a Trudeau. It was his father. So that was a clever little ploy for them to allow that or regurgitate that which we already knew, that they've always been corrupted, but to lay it at the feet of the Conservative Party to pretend that they have been ultimately the worst perpetrators of CCP infiltration into Canada. And that is not the case whatsoever.
Especially as they, on the 40th anniversary from 1984, that they're rolling out thought crime legislation where they can arrest anybody and on even the suspicion or on the possibility that they might do something in the future, or that they said bad words on the internet in the past, is ridiculous. Like I'm so sick of these idiotic people saying the most ridiculous nonsense and being unopposed, because what this ultimately comes down to is that we as people in society, right? And this is, I think, a really important thing to mention too, is that we have accepted this. We've basically farmed out the responsibilities of our civic duties to other people that don't care, don't trust us, or sorry, that we shouldn't trust, and that the system itself we know is corrupt to some degree. Well, how corrupt is that degree? Is it 10%? Is it 2%? Is it 150% where everything is corrupt? It's probably not 150%, right? But it is a corrupt enough that all of these things have been implemented to the detriment of our entire society. Like the carbon tax is the most ridiculous shit ever. You literally are telling me that you're going to take my money out of my pocket to fix the weather when literally nothing has changed, no technology, no change. Oh, the only thing that they're going to do is like, hey, don't do oil and gas, bro. And and like,
Yeah, now and then on top of that, you add in the penalties and punishment for endorsing, telling somebody don't buy a Tesla, buy a Chevy, a gas powered vehicle that can put you in jail. And then on top of that, be C11, C18, now Bill C63, that is literally monetizing and industrializing, engaging us in illegitimate, arbitrary lawfare and punishment and financial abuse, up to and including life imprisonment.
yeah, It's insane. It's authoritarian. It's communistic. It's garbage. And I'm
On
tired of listening to the morons
steroids.
on the left that are spewing this nonsense. Like Canada used to be, I don't want to say like the goal of the planet, but it used to be a representation of what society could look like without the
We were a
corruption, without
stable,
the
responsible
craziness.
democracy.
Exactly. What democracy should look like, that we had representation. And Trudeau and all of his communist morons that support this idiot have destroyed that essentially. Like, we don't have the rule of law, we don't have freedom of speech, we don't have freedom of assembly, we don't have right to our own property. They've seized they've seized our personal properties and weapons if they feel necessary. They're instituting a ban on ICEs, which will collapse the auto industry alone, and that's something not too many people are talking about. And I could go on and on and on. Like if you look at everything that's been implemented in the last 8 years since Trudeau took power, not one of these policies have given us a positive result. And by every conceivable metric that you could even pull up at any time, and only Chrystia Freeland could find out that, like, could pull up the nonsense that's so irrelevant, but still make it seem like it's important, but it's not. On almost every conceivable metric, this government has failed us. And this is the thing that pisses me off most, okay? The most egregious, destructive, stupid, authoritarian policies in our history, and we still can't get rid of this idiot. The government that is, like, guilty of unconstitutional conduct, ethics violations, and innumerable amounts of corruption and embarrassments to our country, and I don't have power as a citizen to be like, "Yo, this is bullshit. Get the hell out." Like, on in any company that you work for, you'd be fired for this level of incompetence and destruction of our business, which is our finances as a country, right? But now you just be like, "No, no, we'll just keep going until we feel like we need an election." Like, it's absurd, man. It's ridiculous.
We've fallen into the trap of debating which criminal we're going to put in the revolving seat of the
Yeah.
crime syndicate boss. But in what we are given the example of the public face of the crime syndicate boss, the Don of Canada, basically is what it boils down to. But at the end of the day, they're all still meat muppets, and they're all contractually obligated to the same attaboy list, the same checklist, the same to-do list. And I published, if people want to say, "Oh, Pierre is going to save us." Well, they need to go and read the blog I published a couple of days ago, where I actually included in there, because I had to go and track it down again. So, but the people that signed on to the UNSDA, aka the Paris Agreement, out of every member in Parliament, there was one that said no. Only one. Every one of them signed on to fulfill these obligations under this Geneva-led infiltration of policy into Canada. So at this point, these guys are implementing and agreeing to implement foreign policy and law into Canada without our consent, because they didn't ask us about any of these things. And then the amendments were the Migration Compact, which was another omnibus bill that hid a bazillion other things, and the list goes on and on and on and on and on. And the bottom line of this is, here now we're reaching a point of transparency where it's just no longer deniable to almost anybody. The rest of the freaking world knows it, but Canadians still want to pretend like these guys are going to, somebody somewhere in this syndicate is going to fix these problems, just with the wave of a magic vote wand. And I just don't see that happening, Bryce, in the capacity that people think it can. And we got into this trap of, well, we'll give him a chance and get to fix it after he's in office. No, that is absolutely backwards. We're going to stop this idea of voting for the lesser of two evils. And we complain that these people are placed into office, and it's because we have forgotten how to place the people in office that we demand. We have
Yeah.
forgotten to hold them to account before they get into that magic swivel easy chair.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll two things. I'll be transparent. And number one, so I joined the Conservative Party, and I like to joke that Trudeau actually made me a conservative. I'm not actually a conservative. I'm a centrist in belief and implementation. But like the right left paradigm, Elon Musk actually made a really good thing that was like, hey, the I was here, right, and the left. Yeah, that's left. So the left was here, right, and the left went like this, and now I'm right wing, right.
Yeah.
And so, like, I really haven't moved. Like, and so I was typically fiscally conservative, but socially on the liberal side, right? But like the
Likewise.
liberals have gone insane. They're insane. They became communists. They're the most insane shit I've ever heard in my life. Used to come from the super extreme right. Now it all comes from the super extreme left. And so I
I,
really got left behind. And there's a whole bunch of people I think in society that have really been left behind by the traditional political parties. And I think the reason for this, and I'll just make this point, and then I'll hand it back to you, is that the system itself is broken, right? We're supposed to live in a
100%.
democracy, right? The democracy is supposed to be one vote for one person that has one voice. Is that what we have? No. And the fact that we only get that ability every 4 years when these people that have the most ridiculous stuff ever is nonsense. It's a broken system that needs to be upgraded, and I think this is the opportunity now because of Pierre Poilievre's ascendancy is to extract those changes from the Conservatives. Be like, you need to upgrade this system so it isn't the absolute garbage that allowed Justin Trudeau to destroy our country in 8 years. Like
It,
it's abysmal.
it has to go deeper than axe the tax. It
Yeah, I
has
know.
to go back and
Ridiculous.
fix things like the 92 Little Child versus the People case that said that there is no accountability to be had from any elected official. Your only recourse is to go and elect a new one. That's it. That's the only opportunity that we have. So this is why we
Yeah.
get this endless cycle with zero accountability, and just maintains the continuity of government. And we have to go back and fix these things. I'm not saying to burn it all down, but you're right. The system as it is absolutely shattered, and incapable of governance or management of anything, let alone self defense or representing us on an international level. It's an absolute impossibility, and no nation can withstand, an unchecked, corruption from within. And that's where we're literally teetering on here if we don't gain some measure of accountability. So these are the things that we're going to be a part of the civilized world moving forward. We have 2024 has to be the year where we get a grip on that. Most of the world is going to be, or a good close to half of the world's going to be having elections this year to decide how they're going to be moving forward in governance. We need to hold the guy to account for things that really are going to impact Canada, not just talking terms. And that's not to detract from being a conservative or any other political party. I don't endorse any of them. No offense,
I'm not taking
because
it.
none of
I
them.
don't either, although I have to make a vote at some point, right?
But it gives you a voice in a room that I'm not allowed in,
Yeah.
right? And this is a part of the problem, right? And one of the things that I had brought up, and this is going to be a homework part for everybody out here, because there's a part of this documentary that I watched the other day, and you and I briefly talked about it. I want to bring this up briefly just for everybody out there, and I'm going to share a link to this out there for
It's
folks
really it's really good.
to
Anybody
watch
that
this.
hasn't seen this yet, I highly recommend because what and I'm gonna just summarize it in like 5 seconds. Basically, what this documentary is all about is that the way that they will potentially take all of your assets, like you're gonna own nothing and be happy by 2030 and Klaus Schwab is all those morons, right? This is one of the ways that it could potentially happen, right? There's a bunch of other ways that it could potentially happen, but this is one of them, and this one's very likely.
Well, and these guys, they break it down so well into
Yeah,
ways that we can digest and understand. And there was one big point that I wanted to take out of this and to tell people. People use the term elite all the time,
I
and
hate
that
that
is
term.
wrong. They are the
Parasite.
moneyed few. There are a select group of moneyed few, and here's the point: that moneyed few is stupider than the stupidest fool in the help home. And it's not that they are inherently evil, they are just absolutely dumb and stupid, and they get their Kool-Aid from a very, very small a group of information. So they are absolutely mortified at us and absolutely oblivious to what they're actually taking part in. So I think we need to put these guys back into a position of looking at them as humans. They're not special. They don't have any special powers. All they do have is money, and a great portion of them have a vast amount of extra stupidity to go with it as well. So it kind of really, to me, was something that puts this on the must watch list for me to recommend for people before we come back and talk again the next time, because it'll make a lot more sense to people. Kind of they'll be able to put things into perspective and where in the time scale we are in a lot of that.
Yeah, and I'll just make a couple points about this. So, the documentary itself really illuminates really well the level of control and the level of resources that are levied against us, right? And we as citizens, free citizens, for now, have very little power in a variety of ways. But one of the ways that we do have power is skills, assets, and skills, assets, and resources. So and what I mean by that is that there's a physicality to you and your community. Okay, everybody that's watching this, everybody that does watch this, you are part of a community, and this is one of the things that I wanted to cover today. You are part of a physical community. Somebody within that physical community is supposed to represent your ass. If they don't, replace them, right? And that's where I think voting is really important, right? The reason that they have so much power is that they control the narrative and they control the media, but they don't control where you live or the people that everybody around you. There's lots of stupid people in society. There's lots of people that believe what we do, that this is bullshit. We need to change, right? And the choice that everybody is going to have is between three options. Everybody will have this choice, and it will either be made for you or you will make it yourself. But you only have three options, and that's number one, submission. They are going to tell you at some point, you do this or else, and you can either say yes, sir, or no, sir. And I hope that most people say no, sir, because if you say yes, you're pretty much dead at some point. The second option, it has been tried hundreds of times throughout history. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but that's a revolution where it gets violent. We break everything down. And we have to build up on the other side, right? The only other option is a renaissance. That's only happened once in all of human history. And the reason that it happened was because of knowledge, and people got together, shared ideas, and decided, made a choice, and took action. And they said, I want something better. I want something different. We should have had that a second time with the internet, but we got cat videos, porn, and dumb shit all over the internet. So we're not didn't quite have the revolution and the renaissance that I really wanted, obviously, but here we are, right? But what that third option is, right, is you in your community and me in my community. We create something different in our community, and when they come to us and say, "Hey, you got to do what we say," we give them the finger and kick rocks, and we'll do our own thing. Thank you very much, right? And if you want to share my screen for a second, voting, I think, is a really important idea. Democracy, like I was saying earlier, is supposed to be one voice, one vote, right? If there is any way, shape, or form that your vote is zeroed out, your vote doesn't count, right? This is why they're importing millions of illegal immigrants all across the Western world, is because they can be like, here, vote this way, or a whole bunch of reasons why they're doing that. But that's one of them, is control of the voting power, because then it's legal. One of the things that they have in their head is everything has to be legal, and they have to tell us about it before they do it, right? And so one of the ways that they steal power from us is that we don't care about voting. Nobody shows up to vote, and when we do, it's corrupted, because as long as they don't get caught, they continue to do it. Right? The mere fact that we have voting machines that are connected to the internet is insane, especially when
Abominable.
we have. Oh, it's ridiculous, bro. And on top of that, right, you have AI that can print unlimited things now. You have AI that can create whole worlds. We're basically a couple steps away from the Matrix with Neuralink and all the other crazy
Oh,
stuff that they're researching right now. Whole other conversation for next time. But the point that I'm making is that if we don't have a proper electoral system that's 100% uncorrupted, we don't have a real voting system, because why would I acknowledge a broken and corrupt electoral system when my vote is zeroed out? That's bullshit, right? And so the only way to fix that is to upgrade the voting system. And so I've thought for years, how can we fix that? How do we have a system that is not corrupted by the people that want a predetermined vote? The only way to do that, there is only one way to do that, especially now with the internet and AI and all the other garbage, is you have to have physical votes only. That's it. That's the only way.
That's it.
Because you have to show up, you have to have a citizen, you have to be the
This
type of
is
person.
me. I am who I say I am,
Exactly.
and my vote actually counts.
Exactly. And so what I was showing here is like the way that like everybody's voted, I'm sure. So you see the voting cards, you tick your box and throw it in. Well, who counts it? Where is it counted? Why
Yeah.
is it counted in that way? What is the process that we actually vote
It's
by?
not who
Nobody
gets
even
the
knows. It's
votes;
like this.
it's who counts the
Exactly.
votes.
Exactly. It was a famous quote by Stalin I actually have in this presentation. But what is a way to fix that, right? We should have a way to verify publicly, a public verification of votes that says this many people voted, this is how many votes these guys, this guy had, and this guy had, this guy had, and whoever votes. And if those two numbers don't match up, somebody's vote got zeroed out because if you have a system like this, and I'll just briefly mention what the system is, right? So you have two numbers that are unique to that vote, and you dump one of them in the bucket or whatever, and you keep the other one so that you can publicly verify I voted for this thing, right? And there's this whole idea
It's like the
that you
beer
can
ticket
never,
idea.
yeah. Well,
Literally,
you have to have
why
some way to
not?
vote,
It
and
worked.
and I'll make this point too. Do you know what the strongest democracy on the planet is?
Don't tell me Greece.
It is definitely not. No.
I was gonna say because they executed Socrates for democracy.
Yeah, it's definitely not them. They never have been. They're not too good at that, to be honest. But the number one by far is Taiwan, and a really simple reason why. Because it's this last point here. The voting is publicly recorded and publicly you're able to watch it. So when they pull a vote out, this vote here, boom, they put it down. It's a physical voting process that anybody can watch. Our voting process, Britain, all of the Western Five Eyes, all of the Western world, it's all corrupt to some degree. To what degree is the real question, right? But the fact that it is not 0% corrupt is a problem, right? And so
Yeah.
what this idea I really want to push on people is that to have an actual true vote, you have to have a true voting system that isn't corruptible as it currently is. And we don't have one, right? So even if we were to have an election this year, which I think we absolutely need to, otherwise we won't have one at all, right? Even if we had that, are you confident that Trudeau isn't going to try and steal that with all of the other corruption that he's done? I don't believe that for a second.
At the end of the day, they don't have to steal the whole election. They only have to steal a small percentage, 3, 4, 5%. And
Exactly.
our apathy allows exactly that to happen. That was,
Mhm.
the perfect case in point for that was when Trump won. He didn't win because they didn't corrupt the election. He won because they didn't corrupt the election enough. They fixed that the second time around. And
Yeah.
that's kind of the exact situation that we're here in Canada when our elections are determined by 59% of the eligible population voting, so that the guy that wins basically gets in on 29% because we've got 45 other conservative parties that take up the other 20%.
Yeah. It's broken.
That's just me being comedic and facetious on that,
But
uh,
it's true. But it's true. Like I voted for PPC the last election because I was so disgusted with the liberal light policies of Aaron O'Toole. Absolute ridiculous that even was possible, right? And yeah, and I already mentioned that I'm a conservative now, and I'm not. I'm a centrist, right? So I'm a card carrying member of the Conservative Party now. But one of the reasons that I did that is because they started to talk about central bank digital currencies. And I'm like, okay, that because you have to take action, right? And I went to a conservative rally with Melissa Lansman here in Vancouver, and I asked her, I'm like, all of these problems that I've kind of talked about, I've talked about them at that time too. I'm like, we have all these problems, okay? One of the biggest is central bank digital currencies. So please tell me, Melissa Lansman, in the Conservative Party second in command or whatever you are, what is your position on central bank digital currencies? Some bullshit answer, absolute nonsense. Didn't actually answer my question. I was pissed, but everybody else in the room cheered for my question, and everybody else in the room noticed that she didn't give me a real answer. And after I
mhm.
said that, after I asked her about that, they released a policy on central bank digital currencies. So the idea that you talking about stuff and you not being a part of the process has no power is bullshit. That's what they want you to think.
100%.
The more people that are aware, informed, and able to do something and take action in your community, and I want to make this point really, really, really clear. The only thing The only thing that the oligarch and all these other idiots fear is us being aware and organized, because they don't have the numbers, right? If we all today said Trudeau's out, get out, or else, what are they going to do? There's now 40 million people, right? But if even a tenth of that, 4 million people be like, yo, this ain't happening no more, and we're pissed, and we whip out the pitchforks and torches, what are you going to do?
Yeah, 100%. We are at this point where we are so demoralized by everything that and so isolated and so disconnected from our communities. And this was something that me and my friends have been harping along about establishing and fortifying our communities, and looking at what we had, uh, you know uh, assets of it, extra what we need, these kinds of things, and fortifying our community. So when they come along and say, you need the government to survive, here is your little carrot, and we'll march you into slavery, that's when we have to say no. And this is that time where we have to say no, and for people to sit there and go, there doesn't make any difference, I can't make a change, a difference, and I'm only one person. It's absolute bullpucky, because these guys are desperately listening to us here right now.
Oh,
And we
100%.
complain that, say again, that, oh, they placed their candidate. Yeah, they place their candidate because they can, because we have forgotten how to place our damn candidate. And that comes from, the only way we make that happen is getting away from the micro stupidity, wasteful time, clutching this, that, or the other thing, and putting it together and finding the lowest common denominator. Let's find 4, 5, 6 different things and hold every one of these people that want to be an elected representative in office to real world questions right now before they get the seat. We hold them to these things right now. The United Nations, our finances, these are things that we have to put back in Canadians' hands, not in Geneva. All things coming out of Geneva that control these parties need to be eradicated, and they'll expose themselves really, really quickly, exactly as you did there. When you start asking these guys hard questions, and to me, and I hope I keep putting this out there because somebody's going to ask Pierre at some point. Great job saying no, Pierre. None of your members will go to the World Economic Forum events in Davos. Why?
Yeah,
That's
do
not
tell.
enough, Pierre.
Do tell.
Why specifically are they not allowed to go to Davos? And what other issues are created by their involvement in these organizations like the World Economic Forum and the public private partnerships that you have allowed the media and every other government to call us idiot, conspiracy, tinfoil hat wearing theorists instead of standing up and defending us for? Why are we involved in giving away money to these organizations, these lobbyists? He did a great job today about saying no, he's not going to be involved with these lobbyists. Great. Why? We needs to get into the whys. We got to start asking these guys the hard whys now, and that's what we establish and place the people that we want in, and getting our communities together on some of these points.
I 80% agree with you, because I think that is very important. But you got to take it a step further, actually, because this is more important than the why. Is the how? What and how are the actual physical, real world things that need to be done to
Right?
actually affect that change? Like, because you everybody could get lost in the why. You can fluff up words and say ridiculous nonsense. Trudeau does it every time he opens his mouth. Oh, Canadians believe this and that and blah blah, blah, utter nonsense, right? So you can lie through your teeth about the why. But when you talk about how, you can
Right.
measure that. You can say, if you say that we're going to do X, Y, and Z, this is now I'm looking for these things. And if you don't do X, Y, and Z, you've lied to me, right? And the thing that pisses me off the most about all of the stuff that the liberals do is the math is ridiculous. They've lied about literally almost everything. And
Everything.
nobody talks about the math. Nobody talks
Everything.
about how much money has been taken out of our pocket. They've doubled our debt. You don't think like Arrive scam was $60 million, and two bozos in a basement made $25 million of our money for doing literally nothing other than knowing the right people in the government. That is
Well,
the textbook definition of corruption. Where did our money go? When are we getting it back? What's the punishment? What are you going to do to change it? How are you going to make sure it never happens again? How did it happen in the first place? Who's going to be punished for it? All of these questions, not a single answer. And the key to that is that the money and the transaction happened. They want a central bank digital currency so they can monitor every single transaction that we do. And you can't even show me and tell me and prove where the money that we've already given you has gone. It's an absurdity. It's absolutely ridiculous that we live in this level of delusion where the government can lie to us and there's no consequences for that whatsoever. It's ridiculous.
so yeah, 100%. So these are the things we have to, if we don't force the guys that we're considering giving, the rights of responsibility to manage the business, the day to day, month to month, year to year of our nation, then it's on us if we
Yeah.
don't responsibly hold them to account before we give them that authority. Because otherwise, we're in a situation here where we would be again, and I couldn't help myself but ask when seeing the farmers rising up and now heading to Ottawa by the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of tractors. Does Trudeau have another emergency act in him? You're damn skippy, he does. And that's
And
on us.
100%. And I think this is a really important factor too. And this is one of the reasons I don't think we're going to have an election unless we have one this year. Is that the war around the world is heating up. It like he rolled out the EMA, or essentially martial law, for bouncy castles and people honking horns. You don't think that's a good enough reason to roll out the EMA when we're actually at war? Sometime soon that's going to happen, right? There's not an iota of doubt in my mind that at some point he's going to try and pull that shit again, because he
100%.
knows that everybody is not down with the type of dumb garbage that he's been pushing, and he has to figure out another way because there's no way he can win legitimately. So what are the options? What are the tools in the toolbox that he has, that he knows, right? And it's authoritarianism. He's already a communist. So what does that mean? He's going to take it by force. So there's no doubt in my mind that if we don't do something about it and we don't get organized, more important than anything else, is that this is
Bingo.
it. This is our future, right? You have
The-
to, and let me make this last point. I'm sorry. You as the listener and the viewer to this, and me and my community, and you and your community, Wayne, everybody that is opposed to this stuff, you absolutely have to get organized with people in your physical community, because what happens on the other side of the planet doesn't matter when somebody comes to kick in your door or your neighbor's door and tells you what's what, right? You have to be ready and organized for the war that has been declared on us, because that's what it is. This is a war for survival, and if you don't fight, you die.
I couldn't agree with you more. And these guys were clever. This infiltration with these young global leaders got themselves into position where they could control policy and lawmaking, and by placement, create an activist judiciary system. And at the end of the day, it's our responsibility to change the laws if we don't like them, because
Yeah.
it's our duty to put people in office that agree upon a small group of people that agree upon rules that establish laws that we agree to live by. When we cannot live by criminal law and their infiltration in it, it is up to us to remove them and change the laws to something that is appropriate for our country. So at the end of the day, the court of public opinion is the highest court in the land, and we are very disorganized in
Mhm.
adjourning in that. We're getting better. We're getting better. I'll grant us that. But these guys are very clever and very committed, because they know that if they somehow lose control of the control, that they're going to end up in places like Nuremberg, and that's absolutely where they belong. But I think 2024 is the year that we have to make a lot of this happen. Wow, this has been a jam packed. We went a little bit over an hour. Bryce, I know we just barely scratched the surface of so many different things. Did you have fun? You want to do this again next week?
Yeah, man, absolutely. If you want to keep me coming back, I can talk endlessly about all this insane nonsense. And every day it seems that we have some new scandal, some new nonsense from our illustrious governor.
Well, It's a day by day. It literally is, and there's so much of it that is just noise out there. And I think that we can, take these opportunities once a week to sort the noise out for folks and give them directions on what's to ignore, and let people know that they're not alone thinking that they're the only ones seeing this insanity, and that there are a lot of good people that are working very very diligently in the background to make things make sense and to help others and to develop community alternatives and rebuilding not just parallel community, but taking responsibility and control back of our community, our country. Just by taking common sense cooperative approach, we can get a lot further than running around like a bunch of chickens with their heads cut off, listening to asshats spew their virtue signaling insanity. No, done with that. No more self-censoring on
Yeah.
their behalf, because all it does is suck our tanks dry. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll kind of just leave off on this. I think that this year is going to be the watershed moment. There's so many crises that are coming to a head this year. Don't have enough time today to list them all, but there's so much that's going to happen today. It's just starting, bro. And if you take no action, you will get nowhere, right? Somebody mentioned in the chat, like, what do we do if we have nothing, right? The No matter how little resources you have, you still have your voice, your actions, and your choices, right? Nobody controls those three things. Those are ultimately up to you, right? And you have to live in a way now that you are at war, because somebody else, and I say this a lot, that somebody else has declared a war on us. And what do you call a war that only one side fights? That's a genocide, right? So my point is always this. The thing that I like to leave off on is this: we are one species, one civilization on one planet. If we lose it, we lose it forever. If these people win, all of our history, all of our future, all of our families, all of everything that we hold dear and care about is dead. And whatever happens is they're going to have complete control over that. So if you don't want that to happen, and I hope that you don't, because I certainly don't, you have to do something about it. And at this point in the game, something is better than nothing. So talk to people in your local community, organize, do something, because they are not going to stop until we lose. So we have to fight in the same way.
this brings up a really great point. Uh, Ukraine and Russia aren't the only countries that are living day by day, real time in a war economy. We
Yeah.
are too, and we need to start taking that into account. We are not far. We are literally on the cusp of needing victory gardens for survival in
Yeah.
our nation. We are there, and so we need to start approaching it that way and remove ourselves from the dependency of their systems, and look after ourselves, because nobody else is coming to save us.
100%, man. Never give up, never surrender.
Amen. Amen. Bryce, thank you so much for finally getting the stars aligned to do this. And this has been a blast for everybody out there. I hope you got a lot of value out of this. Double check, make sure you're subscribed and shared. And before I let you go, Bryce,
Hmm.
we talked about doing this on a Friday as being the day to give people the weekend to digest some of the things that we're talking about, and to think about what's coming for next week. If they're going to do something on Monday is the day to do it. What is it that you think that you're watching for early next week that people might want to keep in the back of their minds if they're watching this over the weekend? What to watch for, think about doing, and beginning of the week. So kind of hit it off on a end it off on a look forward to next week thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't mind doing it about an hour earlier, just because I'm sure there's people on the East Coast. But pretty much only reason. So if you want to do it an hour earlier, I'm okay with that too.
No. I mean, when you're looking at the news on Monday morning, what are you going
Oh,
to be watching for, and what should other people be watching for, and what are you going to be doing that they might want to think about doing on Monday?
Got you. So I'm going to be looking. So a lot of the breaking news comes from Twitter now because it's instant, and so stuff that happens on trending and the people that I follow. I'm looking for financial news on Monday because the thing that's ending on Monday is the bailout vehicle that they used to bail out SVB and a whole bunch of the banks that collapsed last year, and that is ending on Monday. And I
Right.
don't know. So what I'm looking for is if they're extending that, or if they're doing something else, or if it's ending. Because if it's ending, one of the reasons that the banks didn't continue to collapse is that they had this liquidity, so they didn't have to sell off bond assets, which is what collapsed SVB because they had to sell all of these bonds at pennies on the dollar, and they lost huge amounts of money. So that's why that process started. But the unrealized losses on the banks are unimaginable. I don't even want to get into it on the right now because it'll take too much time. But it's
Well,
unimaginable, bro. It'll make 2007 look like a road bump.
that's why I just dropped your Twitter your link into the chat for everybody out there. If you can't wait till next Friday till Bryce comes back and we dive into what happened over the week in between, you can connect with him over there on Twitter, or yeah, I can't call it X. Such a
Twitter.
it's
Sorry,
just
Elon. It's
Twitter.
never gonna be X, bro.
Awesome. Well, thanks again so much, Bryce, for taking the time and hanging out with us here tonight. We'll
Yeah,
see
my
you
pleasure,
next
man. Thank
week.
you so much for the opportunity, man. Have a wonderful night, and I'll talk to you soon.
You betcha. All right, guys. That was everything I hoped it would be. So many gold nuggets in there. So many things to think about, consider, and uh, the idea of this was to do something that would be a little bit ongoing. We planted a lot of seeds tonight. We gave a lot of information, a lot of links that people can kind of start to get a grip on some of these things. And, by next week, some of you guys will have some questions that will actually help you guys to move forward and to make better decisions. So that's kind of the idea of doing this, that we wanted to work into something that would be for people that are looking for information, answers, and solutions. There's no silver bullets, there's no magic answers, guys, but together, this is how we can make an impact and a difference, and protect our communities, fortify our communities. We're pretty good at preparing for ourselves, but this helps us move forward together on a bigger, more more secure level, and to take our damn country back, because if we don't do it, somebody else is going to fix us for us, and that's probably not going to go well, or how we might want it to. So that's a wrap, guys. I love you all. Stay strong, stay Canadian. Faith, family, freedom. Keep fighting. Do not let them let you think that you are alone, or that there is no hope. There is always hope. So God bless, and we will see you sometime real soon. Bye for now.